2024 feels like a big year for Sonic. Between every Sonic fan going crazy with anticipation for Sonic Adventure 2 the movie, and leakers of various credibilities leaking things months in advance of announcement, Sonic fans have had a lot to look forward to and have been eating good recently. But Sonic has had a long and arduous journey, navigating different playstyles, stories, and tones. Because of this, a lot of fans are divided on what the golden era of Sonic truly is. Whether it's the classic era, adventure era, boost era, or the oh god, let's try everything and see what sticks era. I myself am partial to 2003-2008. Well, let's be real. Most Sonic fans, including myself, this golden era is what we grew up with.
Angry mobs roam the city, burning buildings.
Authorities are bracing for more rioting
There are
tonight.
fires burning, there are people being...
He was knocked unconscious instantly.
Citywide emergency has been...
Let's take a look back to where things began. 1990. SEGA had just released the Genesis a year prior in North America, but still needed something to compete with the turtle-crushing plumber who already had 3 unique mainline titles released on their leading home console, the Nintendo Entertainment System. The at-the-time president of SEGA Enterprises Limited, Hayao Nakayama, realized that SEGA needed their own Mario to compete with the at-the-time video game leader Nintendo. A character that could be popular enough to overtake Mario.
Luigi!
SEGA would then open up a competition to all employees to submit character designs for what would be the new mascot. SEGA had mild success with porting their existing arcade games to the Genesis, but this was the time they had to use their resources to edge out the competition. Their solution had to demonstrate the power of the Genesis and cement SEGA as a rival to Nintendo. To begin this effort, a tech demo was created by the later infamous programmer Yuji Naka. Naka would go on to create a demo featuring a character that would roll into a ball and go through tubes. This tech demo would come to be when artist at SEGA Naoto Oshima approached Naka with a project he was already working on called Twin Stars. According to Oshima, Twin Stars would be an action game about twin brothers who protect the dream world from Nightmare World's boss 13. Twin Stars had just been shot down by SEGA due to the idea of a character running through loops and over smooth terrain likely being too difficult to program, but that it might be something Naka would be able to program. Oshima and Naka were already familiar with each other after working on multiple titles together, their first being Phantasy Star for the Sega Master System in 1987. Naka and Oshima would go to use a rabbit as their player character, but had issues as the pace of the game felt off as the rabbit would continuously stop to use its ears to pick up objects, interrupting the flow of the game and overall feeling of speed. After hitting this roadblock, Hirokazu Yasuhara was brought onto the team to assist in development. They scrapped this attack, and to replace it, Naka shared an idea he has had since high school, a somersault attack. And with the game now focusing around this somersault attack, the player character being a rabbit didn't really make sense anymore.
Hey, guys. I've been doing some consulting, and after crunching the numbers, I've realized something. Rabbits don't somersault.
At this point, the higher-ups at SEGA had said they'd like a spiky character, an old man with a mustache, and a dog character. While character discussions were happening at SEGA Japan, Oshima would take a trip to New York City. He went to Central Park with some boards and drew 3 characters, a hedgehog, an old man, and a dog. And then just went around Central Park and asked Americans which they liked most. From most liked to least, the people said they liked the hedgehog, then the old man, then the dog. Oshima would return with this information and the team had their main character, Mr. Hedgehog. This character would be easy for kids to draw with a simple outline and would be synonymous with SEGA due to its blue color. Along with a blue body, this character would have bright red shoes resembling a mix of Michael Jackson's shoes from his outfit on the cover of his album Bad. And believe it or not, fucking Santa Claus.
How much for Michael Jackson's good shoes? Really? Okay, we'll take the bad ones.
And thus, we had our iconic character, Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic was shown as SEGA president Nakayama to compete with the other 200 proposals for mascot characters. Ultimately, Sonic would be chosen, but some of the art designs are very interesting and bizarre. Designs range from a Home Depot employee, a patriotic wolf, a dog, a rabbit, a fucking nightmare, to a familiar-looking gentleman in pajamas who would wield a pillow. This design would be recycled and used for Sonic's main antagonist, Dr. Robotnik. Conceptually, Sonic was finalized. Sonic is a little blue guy who's all about being free, being cool, and being fast. He fights what's right, and that includes foiling the evil Doctor's schemes. In this game, Robotnik's plan is to turn all the animals into robots to help him find the Chaos Emeralds, which are magical gems, of which there are 7. Okay, it was 6 for literally just this game and some of the 8-bit games, and then ever since Sonic 2, it's been 7. Point is, Robotnik wants him to rule the world, build a theme park, piss on the moon, tons of stuff. It's Sonic's job to destroy the robots to save the animals, defeat Robotnik, and collect the Chaos Emeralds before Robotnik does. If you collect all the emeralds, you'll be granted one wish, but we'll get into that later. There are a ton of ways to play Sonic 1. This game released on tons of platforms, from the original release on the Genesis to a upgraded version in the compilation game Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn, to a port in Sonic Mega Collection on the GameCube, to Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis on the Game Boy Advance, to the Wii Virtual Console. The Wii Virtual Console's been shut down for years now, but while there are a ton more options for different ways to play Sonic 1, I'll mention one more, Sonic Origins. Most of the ports I mentioned are notable for one reason or another, but most are perfectly fine ways to play Sonic 1. I said most. 1997's Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn actually gives the player a difficulty selection option, which is absent from the original release, as well as implementing the ability to spin dash, which wasn't in Sonic 1. I actually grew up with Sonic Mega Collection on the GameCube. This compilation title released in North America in 2002. It was my second console I ever owned, and I got it around the time I was 7, which was around 2006. On its own, the version in this collection isn't that special, but it's special to me, because it was my first exposure to all of the Genesis Sonic games. Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis was released in the Game Boy Advance in 2006 to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the Sonic the Hedgehog series, and Christ is it ever bad. It's a pretty awful way to play Sonic 1. The physics feel wrong, the special stages are seizure-inducing, like I said, awful. Jumping ahead to the most recent and accessible release, we have 2022's Sonic Origins. Origins is probably the easiest way for the average core gamer to pick up the classic Sonic titles right now, but this collection has its own set of issues. For this video, I'm going to be using the Sonic Forever fan-made PC port. This is an unofficial PC port that took the best Sonic 1 port and put it on PC. See, in 2013, Sega put out mobile ports of Sonic 1, 2, and 3 What? Did you say Christian Whitehead wanted to do a port of 3 Knuckles, but Sega stopped after 2? Point being, these were widely accepted to be the best versions of the game. They were widescreen and 60 frames per second, as well as boasting some other features like a time attack mode and achievements. The PC port, Sonic Forever, is a very faithful PC port made through decompilation. It is everything the mobile port has, but adds some of its own features such as arcade mode, boss rush, and golf? Okay, I heard good things about this port and was expecting this port to come out swinging, but I didn't realize they took it so literally. And there's the cease and desist from Sega, banning me from making any more Sonic videos. Green Hill Zone. The zone Sega has brought back for 4 of the most recent mainline titles. And that's not including Adventure 2 or all the other titles that have included it. Sega really has been milking that nostalgia. But it's a little hard to be nostalgic for something that shows up in every damn game. Nonetheless, each zone in Sonic the Hedgehog contains 3 acts. Acts 1 and 2 will have the end marked with a signpost that Sonic needs to pass by, and Act 3 is where you'll face a boss which will be guarding the animals Dr. Robotnik has kidnapped to power his robots, contained in a capsule at the end of the act, marking the end of the zone. Green Hill Zone is a cozy location located on South Island and is a great introduction to what the essence of a Sonic game is and should be. An open area with distinct colors, multiple routes, and a diverse set of background elements and creatures, all accompanied by stellar music. Green Hill Zone is decorated with moving flowers, totem poles, and its very iconic palm trees with polygonal leaves. Opening the level, you're introduced to the currency in Sonic, rings. Now, over 30 years after the game released, I still have no idea who left these damn things all over the place. But they basically act as a shield. When Sonic gets hit, his rings will pop out of him and you have about 5 seconds to pick them back up before they disappear. Get hit with no rings, Sonic perishes. So you better have some rings. You might be asking, why should I have more than 1 ring leave? Well, if you can complete Act 1 or 2 of any zone with 50 or more rings, you can jump over the signpost at the end of the act and into a giant ring which will take you to a special stage. But we'll talk more about that soon. And fun fact, when you get hit, even if you're holding more than 30, Sonic will only drop a maximum of 30 rings. And trust me, you'll drop them. Dr. Robotnik will make sure of that. The good doctor has deployed quite a diverse army to put a stop in the Blue Blur's tracks. Your first foe in this game will be the Motobug, a ruthless killer traveling at an extreme 2 kilometers per hour. Yeah, it's basically the Sonic equivalent of a Goomba. Sonic has 2 ways to kill enemies in this game. You can either jump into a spinning ball or roll along the ground. Spin dashing only joins Sonic's repertoire of moves in Sonic 2, so unfortunately, we can't stand still to charge up speed to annihilate our little red friend. We have to earn speed gradually by getting a running start and then pressing down the D-pad. In most cases, you're going to be jumping on enemies to kill them. But rolling has a lot of potential we will get into soon. Immediately after the Motobug, we are introduced to 3 more enemies, the Buzz Bomber, the Chopper, and the Crab Meat. Buzz Bombers will fly in from the side and come to an abrupt halt to shoot an energy ball diagonally at Sonic. Best way to deal with them? Jump into them before they can shoot you, or just run past them. That's one of the beautiful things about Sonic. Unlike a certain weak and pathetic plumber, Sonic can jump into flying enemies from the bottom too. Jump into the bombers and be done with them. Just don't stick around where they patrol because they will continue flying in from each side of the screen until you kill them. Choppers are even simpler. They'll jump up and down below the wood log bridges to try and take a bite out of Sonic. Little do they know that Hedgehog is best served skewered and not raw. Same as the Motobug, you can either roll into them or jump on them. Crab meats will walk left and right and occasionally shoot a pair of projectiles that will do a low arc from both sides. You'll typically find them placed on stairs to make it harder for you to climb up them unless you're quick. But that's the thing, Sonic is all about speed, and Sonic 1 has a lot of opportunities to learn about how to take advantage of speed and how to make terrain work in your favor. The typical first time playing Sonic will likely be holding right to try to go fast. But you can't just do that and stop paying attention. There's tons of obstacles and hazards that you have to look out for, but that introduces a new problem. There are some parts of the game where you need speed. We need momentum. Running up a hill is possible but sluggish if we have no momentum. A loop-de-loop, however, we need some room to get our legs moving if we're going to make it. This opens up another can of worms though. Does Sonic have a speed cap? Yes, and no. So Sonic has two states while moving along the ground, running and rolling. Running can let you go fast, but your speed is capped. Pressing down to roll removes your speed cap. Green Hill Zone Act 1 demonstrates this very well with two back-to-back S loops. Sonic is forced to roll through the S loop, thus removing the speed cap, and holy shit can he move! It takes time to learn when to roll and when to run. We aren't seeing much dickish level design yet. We'll get to that later. And I almost forgot, neutrons. You'll see at least one or two of them on your way to the boss of the zone. There are two types, blue and green. Both will slowly uncamouflage when they show up. Blue ones will drop down and start moving along the ground at a moderate pace. Green ones will shoot a projectile and disappear. It's not all doom and gloom, however. Like the rings, someone has left computer monitors laying around? I'm not sure of the lore of how they were left around everywhere, but they contain various power-ups for Sonic, such as a shield to tank a hit for you without you losing rings, a timed invincibility, power sneakers to give you a timed speed boost, a 1-up, or a super ring box to give you 10 rings. Simply jump on it or roll into it and you'll break it open. You'll actually find quite a few of them hiding in the trees of Green Hill, which will help you get your 50 rings to get into the special stage at the end of the act. Okay, this is a lot to take in, but bear with me. The special stage is a bit like a rotating pinball table, except you don't control any flippers, you control the pinball, aka Sonic. You have to move left and right, as well as jump to navigate through this maze to try and find the Chaos Emerald. But there's a lot of things to work against you though. Let's rapid fire the different types of blocks, obstacles, and switches we can find here. Solid blocks. They're walls, nothing too special about them. Ditto for these candy cane looking circular blocks. Moving on. Up and down blocks. Up blocks will speed up the stage rotation when touched, and the down blocks will slow down the stage rotation. Reverse blocks will reverse the direction of the rotation. Gold tiles will send you back to the next stage with no Chaos Emerald. Speaking of which, the Chaos Emerald. You want to grab this thing and the stage will end when you collect it. It will always be encased by these colored blocks that take some time to break down. Lastly, bumpers. Yeah, I've been sent to the gold tiles by these things more often than I like to admit. Nonetheless, special stages aren't that bad once you get used to them. There's actually one more type of item in the special stages that would grant you a 1-up that got cut before the final release. Yet both the North American and European manuals still make reference to it for some reason. Green Hill does a good job at showing you the benefits of playing Sonic well. The higher up path will typically contain better rewards and less things to slow you down, but more places where you can fall. So you're rewarded for having a quick reaction time or even just practicing the levels. One of Green Hill's gimmicks that it uses occasionally are ledges that will fall apart as Sonic walks on them, which really does a good job at telling the player, alright, keep moving. Acts 2 and 3 will both introduce a new gimmick each as well, with 2 showing the swinging platform that Sonic will have to wait on to get from one side to the other. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of these things because they make you wait, but sometimes it's better to take them than falling off. Act 3 features some spiked rotating logs that will hurt Sonic if he touches the spikes. You can take the slow way and inch Sonic across the whole thing, but I prefer to do things a little faster by jumping midway onto the log, inching along the middle portion of it, and jumping off early once I have enough room to do so safely. So you get to the end of the third act, the robots are going down easy peasy, life is good. Seems like a doctor got wind of it and isn't too happy about it, and he wants to tell you in person. This isn't little Timmy's Mario boss you kill in 3 hits. This is Sonic. You gotta hit this idiot 8 times. Yeah, Robotnik's Wrecking Ball is a pretty big pushover. As long as you have 1 ring, it's pretty hard to lose, especially with such a big window to hit him when he first enters the fight. Get that 8th hit in and Robotnik will turn tail and fly away. Chasing after the doctor, we see the capsule and the animals are released. By the way, did you know these little guys have names? They're Flicky, Pecky, Picky, Pocky, Ricky, Rocky, and Cut. Are you sure there's not an L missing somewhere? Crazy clucking names aside, time for Sonic to move on to his next destination, South Island. Marble Zone. Robotnik said even the ancient ruins with bubbling lava waiting below aren't off limits. Things slow down a lot compared to Green Hill. You can get by Green Hill fairly safely by just holding forward. Not the case with Marble Zone. There's lava, new enemies, and crushing. Getting crushed in the 2D Sonic games is pretty brutal because it's instant death. In Mario, usually you go down a size and have another half a second before it crushes you all the way, but in Sonic, no squishing into a ball before death, it is death right away. And there are a lot of moving elements in Marble Zone, so you have to be patient. This zone only contains 3 badniks compared to Green Hill's 6. Buzz Bomber returns and is accompanied by 2 new badniks, the Caterkiller and the Batbrain. Caterkillers have 4 sections and Sonic will get hurt if he tries to attack any of the body sections. I like rolling into these guys, but you can kill them with some precise jumps. Batbrains like to hang on the ceiling and wait for you to get close, and then they'll drop down and try to fly into you. They're pretty slow and fairly non-threatening. This zone is bigger on traps and environmental hazards compared to its enemy roster. At the start of the act, you'll see lots of fireballs flying up out of the lava trying to toast your hind quills, as well as some fireball launchers in the underground part of the zone. Also underground, we have crushers and spike traps. Lovely. And these are more than just stationary spikes. We have spikes that extend and retract, and spikes that are weighted to try and turn Sonic the Hedgehog into Holy the Pincushion. Yeah, Marble Zone is a bit of a weaker zone in Sonic 1, but certainly not the worst. The problem is more that it slows the pace down a lot compared to Green Hill Zone. Act 1 is pretty short and sweet though. Something else the 2013 version of this game adds is extra playable characters. Tails from Sonic 2, who has the ability to fly, and Knuckles from Sonic 3, Knuckles, who can glide, climb walls, and break destructible walls by walking into them. If you're playing as Tails or Knuckles, you can actually start flying or climbing right before you go underground in Act 1 to find an invincibility box high up in the wall. Not very useful considering even invincibility can't stop you from being crushed, but hey, it's there. Act 2 gives us another slow platforming section where we push the block into lava and we have to wait for it to sail across. But don't get used to that, kids. Immediately after, we are put into a lava chase sequence. Not too hard to outrun, but definitely some much excitement here. Some swinging platforms later, and we're introduced to a new hazard to get used to, the Hell Spring. Basically, check to make sure you're not just holding right and not paying attention, because if you aren't paying attention, you're going to take a one-way trip from being Sonic the Hedgehog to Goose the Cooked. Marble Zone actually got a pretty big facelift from how it was looking early on. At one point, it looked like someone just kind of went ham with the level editor. And later, someone on the team seemed to just get really into UFOs for some reason. I almost prefer it like this. I think it gives the zone a little more character.
Wow, your house is kind of empty. That's more like it.
Act 3 pulls out all the tricks with a ton of spike traps and fireball cannons. The 2013 version actually has a pretty neat alternate path. If you fly or climb up the wall at the beginning, you can actually find a whole new alternate route that skips most of the annoying underground traps. If you're playing as Sonic though, you're in for a bad time. One mistake can send you down pretty far, so you gotta be really careful. At the end of the act, we're greeted with Robotnik with a new lease on life. Wrecking balls are out of style and fireball dispensers are totally in. Dude saw one redstone tutorial and said, "Yes, that!" Robotnik will drop fireballs on one platform on either side of the arena and then fly over to the other side. Best way to do this boss is hit it twice on its way over to your side and then run and jump over to the other side where the fire should be cleared enough to land without taking any damage. Free the animals and we are out of the Sonic equivalent of Sen's Fortress. Spring Yard Zone. I love the colors they use for this stage. It is a great dusk vibe. Whoa, no. You get out of here. Wrong dusk. As the name would imply, this zone has a lot of springs. Speaking of which, it's probably about time I mentioned the 2 different colors of springs. Yellow is the nice little hop spring. Red is the zoom spring. Spring Yard has a lot of things that will bounce you around and can frustrate some players that aren't used to the physics. Alright, there's no need to be an asshole about it. Yeah, I don't mind Spring Yard, it's pretty alright, even if they do bring back dickish spots that get crushed. Spring Yard was actually originally called Sparkling Zone and took place at nighttime with a bit of a casino vibe in the prototype, but I think dusk was a better choice since we have a nighttime stage later in the game, and it just makes Spring Yard a much more historically unique stage in the Sonic franchise. Right away in Act 1, you'll see Crab Meats and Buzz Bombers, which we are already familiar with, but quickly we also see another new face, the Roller. He rolls in really quick from off screen and then stops for a minute to peek out from his shell, and then zooms out just as fast. They're dicks, because you can only kill them when they're stopped and peeking from their shell. So unless you're expecting one to show up, they can be really annoying. Something that I do like here that is reused in Sonic 2's Chemical Plant Zone are some hidden spots in the wall where we can go in to collect some secrets. Chemical Plant did it a lot more though. After another section of vertical moving platforms, we find the game's attempt at a pretty helpful tutorial on jumping and momentum. There's a secret we can acquire if we hit the spring and jump off at the right moment. It takes us to a platforming section above the beginning of the act and gives us our shield and a ring box. Not bad. Beyond the spring that takes us there is the other enemy that is introduced in Spring Yard, spikes. They're significantly worse than the rollers because you can't jump on them, and even rolling can get you hit sometimes. If you're trying to get to the special stage, forget about trying to get points for killing these guys. The music for Spring Yard Zone is just an unapologetic bop. Definitely one of my favorite Sonics from the game. Not much more to say. Act 1 is done without too much trouble. Act 2 is like one of those really mediocre magicians that will blow your mind in elementary school. If all the momentum stuff from earlier in the game was somehow too complicated for you, this is the epitome of easy and free momentum. half pipes. Hold down and enjoy getting easy momentum. It's that simple. It's not terribly useful here at the first half pipe, but that won't always be the case. The top half has a shield that is pretty nutty to get, as well as a lot of platforms that extend and retract, a lot like the ones in Super Mario World. The bottom half of this map also contains an extra life if you can navigate through a path of crushers. The 2013 version also adds this upper path towards the end with a ton of rings and extra life you can get with only Tails or Knuckles. This route also has not a second, but a third exit. Yeah, this level actually already has a second exit, and is one of the 2 only levels in the whole game with multiple exit signs. Act 3 is fine. It has this really weird slope on this hidden top path towards the beginning of the stage. I spent a lot of time on the slope trying to figure out how to get up properly. I thought I had to get a running start and jump at the ledge. After about 5 minutes of trying different things, I resorted to the internet and found a video by Super Sonic on YouTube. The way you're apparently supposed to do it is to jump on, jump nearly right away, and then jump once more off the end. This feels really wrong, but it's a small gripe in a fairly okay level.
Those sick f***s.
Up ahead, there's a half pipe with invincibility and speed shoes modder. Nice. A little ahead, we'll have to traverse some smaller half pipes with spike balls rotating around the insides of them, as well as one of those slow-moving block puzzles.
Aw yeah, now this is gaming.
Shortly ahead, you'll fall and use a red spring to move past another infamous life advice sign. If you hold left here, you'll land on a bumper and you can use the jump you get off that bumper to flump onto a platform. After moving our hedgehog's rump, we can ascend to find a clump of rings as well as a shield and extra life to encourage us to not be a mugwump and help us trump this plump grump of a chump and leave his hump without even a stump of a machine hitting it with a heavy thump. Yeah, Robotnik's not really the sharpest egg in the cart with this one. After some platforming over a bottomless pit, Robotnik shows what he's been hard at work at the lab. Eggmobile with a spike. Yeah, this is fairly underwhelming. Robotnik comes down with a spike to pick apart the stage and tries to leave you with no room, but it's pretty easy. All the fights in this game require 8 hits, so he goes down without too much trouble. This game's actually pretty fun. Now that we're already at the halfway point, I'm sure the game only goes up from here. Labyrinth Zone. The Sense Fortress of Sonic 1. What do you mean we already used that joke? Okay, fine. If this is the Sense Fortress of Sonic 1, then Marble Zone could be Blighttown. Point being, Labyrinth Zone f***ing sucks. Immediately, you see this water rocking up and down, and you find it really quickly that you are a fair bit slower in water. We're also introduced to one of the most common enemies in Labyrinth Zone, the Burrowbot. I'd call this one of the more innocuous enemies in Sonic 1. Its nose will peek out from the ground and isn't terribly hard to spot. It pops out of the ground and will just start patrolling the area. No big deal. Earlier we saw a very small dip in the water, but here we really have to get our quills wet. You'll also notice a beeping that sounds like a submarine radar. I'm sure this is completely normal and isn't a bad omen whatsoever. Yeah, drowning is probably one of the most famous things in the classic Sonic games, with that Jaws-like theme starting pretty quick. Lucky for us, there are these bubble spouts spread out underwater. Grab one of the really big bubbles and the underwater time will reset. You can probably guess what happens if we don't get the bubble in time. We get out of the water to escape a watery death, only to find another bigger cavern of water. Only this time, we see a new robot the Doctor has thrown our way. Meet Jaws. Be careful of this guy. He goes left and right.
Ah, that's not so bad. Oh Christ.
Yeah, he's not really a big deal. Now we get introduced to some pretty dickish tricks and traps in Labyrinth Zone. Meet Ascending Platform. There are platforms down here that you can step on and they'll start rising into spikes. Now this could be used for a huge advantage in Labyrinth Zone, but we have to do a couple things first. Press the button on the left and grab the ring box in the room. Then step on the area to the immediate right of the button. A platform will start rising. If you can time it right, you can jump to the right onto a platform with a bubble spout. Jump up to the left until you get to the surface, and we'll find a platform that wasn't there before. Jump on it, and it will carry us across the water to get to the top half of the level. If you've collected every ring so far, don't get hit, and collect every ring before the end, you'll actually have exactly 50 rings for the special stage after you take this really great level shortcut. Only problem is if you accidentally step on the ascending platform before pressing the button, then you're stuck taking the bottom path. The bottom path is significantly more annoying. There are fast-moving spike balls, spears that extend and retract, as well as instant kill spike traps. On the bright side, we meet the final new badnik for Labyrinth Zone, the Orbinaut. The Orbinaut is just a chill guy who likes his space and orbits 4 spike balls around him. If you get in his line of vision, he'll shoot his spike balls whichever way he is facing one at a time, after which he'll be left defenseless and you're free to take him out. As we get out of the water section, we find one more obstacle, because this level didn't have enough. Yeah, we have fire dispensers too. Yippee. Act 2 starts out kind of fun. You go down this cool little water slide, and after avoiding some more traps and drowning, you end up in a bit of a treasure room. There are a ton of item monitors here, and under one of them is a button to open the door to the next area. This act is honestly pretty big on buttons. You have to press a couple more to finish the act, but this act isn't so bad in my opinion. The only really offensive thing I could find is this platform that will crush you in a spike if you're not careful. Otherwise, this one isn't too bad. The third act of Labyrinth Zone puts us on this endless water slide where we have to jump at the right time to find this button which will reveal an opening we can jump into. After going back to our favorite state, wet, we have to do some platforming between these extending and retracting spikes. You might be tempted to jump over 2 at a time, but you'll want to land in the middle where you can find a pretty big shortcut that cuts most of the level. The main path for this level is pretty arduous, so you're going to want to take the shortcut. This stage ends with a non-boss chase for Robotnik. The water will rise, and you'll have to ascend a pretty steep platforming section filled with extending and retracting spikes, as well as fireball launchers. You don't actually have to destroy Robotnik's mech here. It probably goes without saying, but this is probably the least memorable boss fight in the game, if you can even call it a boss fight. Sonic 3 actually introduces a bubble shield that would allow Sonic to stay underwater indefinitely. In the files for Sonic 1, there's actually an unused goggle monitor as well as some sprites for some goggles. Maybe these would have allowed for the same thing? Moving on. Starlight Zone is one of my favorite parts of Sonic 1. The music is uplifting and inspiring with a very beautiful starry night background. Immediately that sense of wonder is cut short by meeting our next new badnik, Bomb. Yeah, that's his whole name, Bomb. Bomb does what you'd expect. Crush your hopes and dreams. Yeah, this is probably the worst badnik in Sonic 1 in the sense that it's not really even a badnik because it can't be destroyed. If you get close, its fuse will ignite and it will detonate in a few seconds. It cannot be destroyed by jumping or rolling into it, so yeah, it's a strong contender for the Jerk of the Year award.
Aww.
But thankfully, right below the first bomb of the stage is a hidden path leading to 3 ring monitors and invincibility monitor. It also seems that Dr. Robotnik has really started to go back to basics to help him defeat the blue blur, as an art tool he has purchased as a desktop fan? I feel like Robotnik has just gone off the deep end at this point. He probably saw a FNAF video and said,
I know why they got killed. It was the fan.
yeah, these prove to be more of a nuisance than anything. Not really a huge game changer. Speaking of nuisances, we meet the green Orbinaut, who is the only other enemy in Starlight Zone. This one is like the one from Labyrinth Zone, except it will never fire its spike balls, making it another enemy that's just really annoying. In English, both this and the enemy we saw in Labyrinth Zone are called Orbinaut, but in Japanese, they actually have unique names. The red one in Labyrinth Zone is called Unidasu, while the green one in Starlight is called Uni Uni. Uni is Japanese for sea urchin, and Dasu is also Japanese meaning to send or put out. Which makes sense because only the red one will throw its spike balls at the player. Oh, and don't forget your favorite hazard from Marble Zone because it's back, the fireball launcher. Lovely. Truthfully, Act 1 is a pretty fun time, even with the enemies being a little annoying. Act 2 gives you a red spring right from the get-go to just let you have some fun. But once you've launched off the ramp at the end, you'll discover Robotnik really did some crazy work on these fans. He figured out how to reverse their suction. I was genuinely a bit confused when I was doing my playthrough for this video. I thought there was a fan off screen that was blowing Sonic to the left, but nope, it's this little shit right here. I also found another really neat thing in my playthrough in Act 2, but it's only in the Forever version on PC. You can actually take the top path and jump over the red spring and get on top of the level and jump across to the end and beat the level in under a minute. I tested this in the original Genesis version, and while you can get over the wall, Sonic just falls through the floor. In the 2013 mobile port, you just can't get over the wall at all. As far as going down the intended top path in Act 2, there's a new gimmick. These little seesaws with spike balls on them. And these also feature a bit of momentum. The further up you land on them from, the higher the bounce will be when the ball lands back down and bounces you up. Near the end of the top path, there's 5 ring boxes here, so that's an easy trip to the special stage if you haven't gotten all the Chaos Emeralds by now. The bottom path isn't too hard either. I think Act 2 is actually one of my favorite acts in Sonic 1 as a whole. Act 3 is no slouch either. Mind you, there are a couple sections where they got a little too trigger happy with whatever button on their keyboards places bombs, but otherwise, it's pretty fun. Robotnik has gotten rather fond of the seesaws and has thought it's better to stay out of the Hedgehog's reach and drop the bombs on the seesaw. Oh. Yeah, this boss is also fairly simple. Jump on the opposite end of the seesaw to launch the bombs up to hit the doctor, or if they miss, use the bounce the bombs give you to hit the doctor yourself. Yeah, he didn't think this one through too well. Scrap Brain is pretty brutal. Robotnik does not make it easy on you here. You really want to do your best to stay on the top path. It's not too difficult to stay up there if you can time your jumps correctly. Caterkillers and bombs are back as well as a new enemy, the Ball Hog. The Ball Hog is honestly a pretty easy enemy. They'll be at the top of the slopes and bounce harmful balls down the hill towards Sonic. Just dodge the balls and you're fine. There was actually a second badnik planned for this zone called Splats, which would hop around. Sadly, it was scrapped before the final release. Yet it can still be placed in the debug mode, but only in Marble Zone for some reason. Splats would actually return in 2017's Sonic Mania as a proper fully fledged enemy. Scrap Brain actually has a lot of different types of hazards. False platforms that open and close on a timer, small rotating platforms that will make Sonic slip off, crushers, saw blades, flare stacks, wall electricity, and whatever the f this is. Yeah, screw Scrap Brain Zone. It's also the only other stage with a different name in the prototype, originally called Clockwork Zone. Worse though, you can't even get special stage rings here. I don't think this is by design though. In the original game, the part of the VRAM that is typically used for the giant ring graphic is actually used for smoke in the background? Whatever, let's just take a look at Act 2. Act 2 isn't much better. Actually, it's much fucking worse. There's no top path, this whole thing is a maze. But my recommendation is to go to the top area in the first room and go down the route that takes you, as it's fairly linear and it seems a bit faster than taking the bottom route. There's swinging spike balls here that are always put in really annoying places. Just overall a bad time for one of the last stages. Once you finish the level, we finally corner the doctor. It's over for you. Time for... No, wait! Damn it! Scrap Brain Act 3. Okay, so I might have lied about Labyrinth Zone being the only zone with water. Regardless, for some reason we were back in Labyrinth Zone, except apparently the doctor got some of the robots to spray paint the whole place white and fill the zone with grape soda. I guess one palette swap level won't kill me. Actually, it's freaking Labyrinth Zone, so maybe it will. If you get ahead of the moving platform without getting crushed, you can actually take a huge shortcut that cuts out most of the level. If you don't take it, well, expect everyone's favorite stage of Labyrinth Zone, but now in white! Yeah, if you miss a shortcut, you'll find your typical Labyrinth Zone fanfare down to the Burrobots, Jaws, and Orbinauts. Just get it over with and fast. After taking the springs, we finally face a doctor for our final battle. At the end of this long hallway, we're greeted by the good doctor's most dastardly creation yet, 4 Crushers. Yeah, I guess he heard me whining about the Crushers earlier and said, "Get a load of this. How about 4? 2 Crushers will come out each time with Robotnik always inside one of them. Run out of the way and hit it from the side. If you hit the empty one, it won't count. I recommend staying in the middle of either of the 2 middle Crushers. This should give you the best chance at getting hits in. He'll also shoot 4 balls of electricity at you between each crush. That one is pretty simple to avoid. Just stay at one end of the arena for a few seconds and then start running to the other side. Get your Ave hidden and Robotnik will be on the run. If you're a real gamer, you get a 9th hit as he's leaving, but this is completely optional and doesn't affect the ending. So yeah, that's Sonic 1. But you may be asking, leave? What if I didn't get all the emeralds? Well, it's mostly the same, except the credit sequence finishes with Robotnik juggling all the emeralds you didn't find. And Sonic won't have any animation with the emeralds either, he just jumps at the viewer right away. Although there is a bonus exclusively and forever if you enable the 7th emerald in the settings menu. If all 7 emeralds are collected in a playthrough, super forms from Sonic 2 and onwards are available. This was added in the 2013 release, but you had to enable the 7th emerald through the debug menu that you can access with a cheat code. Collect 50 rings and we can press a button to turn into a super character. Super forms will allow your character to go much faster than normal, jump much higher, and provide them with invincibility. The only downside is your rings will start to drain one at a time, and if you run out of rings, your character will revert to normal. I mentioned earlier that Forever is based on the 2013 mobile port of Sonic 1, but it also has its own features. It has a unique achievement set that is different from the 2013 mobile port, a boss rush mode, a special stage rush mode, and a special stage maker. There's also a very comprehensive options menu that will allow for all sorts of changes to customize your Sonic 1 experience. You can change things like your basic display settings, you can change gameplay settings like whether to have 6 or 7 Chaos Emeralds, which, as mentioned earlier, can allow for Super Sonic if you set it to 7. You can add a bunch of new abilities to your playthrough from the Spin Dash, CD's Super Peel Out, or even Mania's Drop Dash. Tweaking visuals is another thing Forever allows you to do with options for things like Mania's Smooth Rotation and the scrapped Marble Zone UFOs. One of the biggest additions Forever makes is playable Amy Rose. She plays a little differently from the boys and can be a little hard to get used to. She controls exactly like Sonic, except she has 2 main differences. If you hold up and press the jump button, she can do a huge high jump with her hammer that will destroy enemies on the way up. The only downside with this is that she's vulnerable during her descent. You can also press the jump button in midair to do a glide. But let's say you don't like this version of Amy and rather she play more like she does in Sonic Advance, well, there is an option for her moveset to be more like it is in the first 2 Sonic Advance games. Honestly, I've never played much of the Sonic Advance titles, just a little of the first one, but I really do not like this alternate moveset for Amy. She no longer curls into a ball when jumping and loses her high hammer jump for a sideways dash attack that damages enemies and gains speed. It's probably something I could get used to with time, but I'm honestly not sure that Sonic Winslow Leo is best suited for this playstyle. I won't talk about Origins in too much detail in this video, but for comparison's sake, Forever released their Amy before Origins was updated to include Amy with its Plus DLC. Origins Amy has a moveset that feels like a mix between Sonic's movesets from Sonic 3 and Sonic Mania. She has an ability like the Insta Shield from Sonic 3 that spins her hammer around her. Difference being that her hitbox is a lot bigger than Sonic's Insta Shield in 3. If you hold it until you drop on the ground, you'll do a dash that doesn't have as much speed as Sonic's drop dash from some other games, but puts her hammer out. You can also change direction without a speed penalty for a moment after starting, so that's kinda neat. I think Forever's regular Amy is my favorite of the 3 though. The last big thing that Forever adds that I'll mention is mod support, so if you want to try out any of the mods in the huge catalog available on Game Banana, be my guest. I'm hoping someone makes a Metal Sonic mod myself. A lot of what I found for this video was found on Sonic Retro or the cutting room floor, as they're both great resources to learn about Sonic 1's history and cut content. Rapid firing through some things from both websites, we can see a bunch of unused sprites for Sonic, these unused faces for the totem poles in Green Hill Zone, this Let's Go sign from when Spring Yard Zone was Sparkling Zone, some unused monitors, or even unused parts of the Egg Capsule sprite. There's so much that didn't make it, and it's so interesting to think of how it could have turned out different. Yeah, never mind.